call the special committee of the whole meeting at Tuesday, February 11th at 6:12 p.m. by our public clock. Looking for the approval of the agenda.
So moved.
All those in favor? Thank you. Looking for the adoption of the minutes of special committee of the whole January 13th, 2014. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Oh, yes, there is. Oh, no, okay. No questions. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Yeah, I am. Moving on to old business 3.1, discussion tax rates, assessment values for 2014. Director of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to have a brief discussion about a proposed tax rate in the current budget 5-year plan. There's been some discussion about the $73 and that it's 5% increase. And what I wanted to explain to committee is that last year our tax increase was 3.43% to the average assessed home. Since last year and this year, our property assessment values have decreased about 2%. And so what this means in City of Colwood is that just to stay even with what our funding was last year, we have to get at least 2% back just to stay even. So, of course, we're up at 5%. So, in theory, our tax increase this year is about 3%, which is actually lower than what it was last year. The only reason it's visually looks higher than last year is because our assessment values in the community overall went down so significantly.
That's it. Thank you. I'll go to the public. Public have any comment regarding that? Seeing none, I'll go to committee. Committee, any questions, comments? Great, thank you. Do we need to move to receive that, Mr. CAO, or? Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, yes, I think, well, the big thing here is that at the moment, based on what the Director of Finance said, is that I think on an average house, we're looking at about a 5% increase, which is only about $73 per month or something like $6 per day or something like that. No?
Year.
Per year, sorry. Yes. So that's a bit much. So the question is this council satisfied with that? Because that's really what the question's about.
Oh, so you would like a discussion on that?
Well, I think it would be useful because, again, you can have the same discussion when it comes to council, but sometimes if you want us to adjust the budget, this is the time to tell us to go away and adjust it.
Okay, got it. I'm going to go back to we will discuss that in committee, but I'll go to the public since you sort of have a definition of what we're discussing. Did you have anything to say? Public?
Dwayne McNeil, 487 Sumar Place. How does this relate to your original proposal of cost of living plus 1% in relation to what our actual increase is going to be? Because wasn't there deflation last year?
Yeah, there was. But I'll look to our Director of Finance.
Yes, and basically the way that I'm looking at the potential tax increase is based on the assessed value, since that is how we raise the taxes. The cost of living is I think it was a council.
No, that was actually just something I ran on.
Oh.
That's just me personally. That's a Rob issue. That's not a committee issue.
So I did not build a budget on a platform from 2011.
We'll talk about that later.
Another comment to also remember is that it's a very shaky area to get into when you start to do a cost of living or consumer price index, because those calculations don't take into account maybe how much fuel is going to increase, or it's a very precise calculation, food, clothing, etc. It doesn't really go beyond that. So I always like to kind of stay away from that as some sort of foundation for building, because it excludes so many other factors, electricity, hydro, etc.
Okay, thank you. I will come to the committee then. Councillor Logan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question, getting back to your comment about the 5% and how it relates to the reduction in assessed value. So is that, in other words, does that mean that takes into account the increase in mill rate to make up the difference? So, as prices increase significantly, the mill rate generally goes down to keep an even keel. If they go down, it comes up to maintain an even keel. Is that what you're talking about in essence?
Yes, through the chair to Councillor Logan, the mill rate will go up slightly from what it was last year to take into account the fact the assessments have gone down.
Okay, and that's where the 2% comes in.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so I guess in essence, then, really, we should probably just get rid of that 5% figure, because we're just simply adjusting the mill rate, so we have status quo, and then we're building on that. So really, it is only a 3% tax increase. I just don't want that message to get
Right.
lost. Yeah. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Sorry, Director of Finance.
Yes, no, that's exactly correct. That's why I felt it was important to bring it forward, because that loss in assessed value could get lost. And in town of Royal, they're actually over 6% this year.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cullington?
Thank you. Through you to the Director of Finance, just another question of clarification, because the other thing that always muddies the water around these budget figures are, as our population grows each year, we also have a bigger budget, but it's spread amongst more people. So therefore, even, the budget might increase even without the average property homeowner paying more. Can you comment on that?
Yes, where all things are equal, if we have more houses to tax in the community, there's going to be more revenue available. But in the case of this year, while we did see a slight increase in the number of taxable properties, the assessment value went down significantly more than what we gained. Also not taken into account in the budget document at this time is what our new development impact. We don't know that, so that will kind of be gravy to the city, because we should know that before the notices are sent out, but BC Assessment have not given us that information at this time. So if it's at all possible, by the time we do the tax rate bylaw, it's possible that it could go down, but at this point we have to go with what we know.
So at this point in time, we're looking really at an average.
Yes.
3%. Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions? Thank you. Chris, so your original question regarding looking for sort of, not leadership, but direction, thank you. Yeah, because you can't get any leadership from this group. So did the direction get answered, or do you need something more formal?
No, I think that's good, because what that'll do is that if all these recommendations from Committee of the Whole, once we got them all, we're still two outstanding. One's Public Works and one is a bylaw. It will then go to the next council meeting, all of them, which means that once you've approved that, you've approved the entire budget.
Okay, great, thank you. So we don't need to move to receive or anything as long?
No, I don't believe so.
All right. Moving on then. I'm sorry. Councillor Dick.
Something occurred to me during that last exchange that I just wanted to ask about amended budget, whether we would be looking at, because there are always a few unknowns in the budget, and then as we see how things actually come in, will we be looking at an amended budget later where we might have the option to fund some things a little bit differently once we know what our revenue stream is looking like?
I'm not aware of any surprises at this point. There is likely to be an amendment required with gas tax funds because we now have our year-end figures, and so staff are going over what has actually happened, which basically means we can't have money in next year's budget that's going to overspend the gas tax account, and at this point it will because of our 2013 numbers have come in. But I think I haven't had a chance to really figure out what the actual change is going to be in projects. But I do not think it's going to be significant. So it won't affect taxation. It'll just be gas tax projects that are being funded and what is actually available next year, which may mean that one project has to come off the table.
Is that it? Yep. All right. Moving on to 3.2 then, bylaw, operating budget, page 13 to 17. Director of Finance, did you want to comment on that? Or?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Committee asked staff, actually committee has recommended that all other budgets be forwarded to council for review. The only two that are outstanding at this time are the bylaw operating budget and the public works operating budget. These two budgets were deferred primarily because of scheduling questions that were brought up as part of the budget review process. And I believe our CAO has done what he can to have discussions about flexibility with scheduling. And at this time, we are unable to make any changes to the current structure because of bargaining restrictions. So staff are presenting the two final budgets here for review and hopefully recommendation to council.
Great, thank you. Chris or Mr. CAO, did you have anything additional?
Mr. Chairman, if council remembers, I did send out a memo on January the 22nd regarding the hold-up with these two issues. They are to do with the collective agreement in terms of trying to get a 7-day-a-week, longer hours for bylaw and trying to find a different way of working Saturday drop-off pickup with drop-off without paying overtime. And when I approached the union, they said everything is going on the side table as part of negotiations. They will not consider them. I then phoned GVLRA. GVLRA also said on the management side, you shouldn't be doing anything either because everything has to go onto the table for negotiations. However, unfortunately, negotiations haven't started yet, mainly because of the manager that was brought in left, and at the moment there's nobody doing it. However, I have been in contact with the director of HR for CRD and also the individual who is negotiating the fire agreements, the GVLRA fire agreements, and I'm waiting for a response back in terms of when the bargaining might start and what we have to put forward. I've already put forward the things that we want changed in the collective agreement, so that's there. The only thing I haven't done is refine the wording that's needed.
Okay, thank you. We're specifically talking just about bylaw right now and the bylaw budget. I will go to the public. Public, does any comments just regarding bylaw? And the bylaw budget? No? Okay, great. I will come to committee then. Committee, any comments or discussion? Councillor Lukens, then Day.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question with respect to the radios. I don't know what page it is for you, but it's page 1 of 3 on my iPad. At the top, it says forecast TCA costs by law department, and it's got radios as the first item. 15,000 in 2018. I'm just wondering why that hit's all going to happen in 1 year and not be spread out. I see that in a few places. I'm just wondering why that is.
Director of Finance, do you want to comment? Or do you CAO? Or who would like to?
Maybe you should because I won't.
Right. The reason being is that it's all part of the CREST radio system, and I'm sure it could be pushed over a number of years and then put into a reserve, but this is just as good a way of doing it. And in that particular period of time in 2018, that's when they would be replaced anyway. So in terms of a technicality, I'm not sure what the Director of Finance prefers in terms of putting it over time and putting it into a reserve, or just making it available at that year as a one-time cost.
Sorry, hold on. Did you want to comment on that? I had Councillor Day was next up, but did you
I'm not
have
done.
something on that specific issue?
Just on that specific issue, actually the timing might be great because
Sorry.
the Crest radio system will be undergoing a refresh anyways, and so it'll be about that time where new radios will be required as part of the refresh.
Yeah, I understand that. I'm just wondering why we have to take a hit all in one year and why we can't spread it out a little bit so the pain's a little bit less. It's the same with the vehicles. There's, 30,000 in 2014 and another, or 2015 and another 30 in 2017. Why can't we disperse it a little bit?
Well, one of the reasons I could suggest is, number one, that's in 2018 when you look at these costs. That doesn't mean council is obliged to purchase them. Once you start putting them in over time, it sort of leads to a conclusion that you're going to purchase them. This gives council that decision, yes, we're going to go with them, or no, we're not. It doesn't conclude that you are going to approve their purchase.
Director of Finance, and then on this issue. Okay.
The difference between those two is that the vehicles are funded via a reserve that is already established. The 15,000 is all from taxation, and we just felt that it's easier to, because the budget for this year and next year are already so tight, that it made more sense just to put it out in 2018, but like the CAO has said, you can decide to take it out as well.
Great, thank you. Councillor Day?
Thanks. It brought up for me why, some things we have a reserve fund for and some things we don't. I know that those Crest radios are important for fire and police as well. So I'm wondering if it's going to be part of a bigger picture of renewal, then we may want to consider doing some sort of a reserve for those items. If there's going to be, when we're just talking about bylaw, we're talking about 3 radios, it's not such a big deal. But if we're talking about fire and police as well, then that might warrant some thought. And my question was just on, I'm just trying to see what page, it's page 1 of 5 on my iPad of the, at the top, it's the bylaw department's operating budget and their summary of revenue and expenses. And we may have asked about this before when we were looking at things. I think it might be an anomaly, but I just wanted to make sure. Under the recurring operating expenses for maintenance, the second line up from the bottom, it goes $3,700 in the budget in 2011, and then $7,400 the budget in 2012, and then that budget comes back down to $2,000 in 2013, and then up slightly in each of the following years. I'm just wondering is that an anomaly or an error?
It's possible that because, if committee will remember that because of our transition to this new software, we've got the budgets where they're supposed to be now, but in prior years, some amounts, we didn't really know where to put them, so they had to go somewhere, and I would suspect that that has to do with that issue, and you'll see that in some circumstances where the number is really high, but it's because we weren't sure where to put it. It might have been a one-time budget item that no longer need to be in the budget.
Thank you.
Councillor Lukens?
Thank you. Just one further question with respect to this budget. This budget includes the 3 bylaw officers. From what I understand from the CAO is we can't adjust scheduling or anything like that. As I had stated before, I'm not supportive of retraining 3 bylaw officers due to the cost, and it's the community and the citizens that we need to report to. And I've talked to some people, and it's not that I don't support the graffiti program. I totally do, and most people recognize that we don't have graffiti, but just the cost associated with retaining the third person is a concern. So I'm not going to be supporting this, unfortunately, because that piece has not been addressed, and it's a piece that ever since we allowed the third bylaw officer to come forth, I believe it was in 2011 or 2012, I can't remember which year, but that there were asks, and we're in 2014 and they still haven't been fulfilled. I know they've been tried, to gain some traction, but that's the reason I'm not going to be supporting this. Thank you.
Any other committee members? Seeing none, I'll just say my 2 bits too. I concur with Councillor Lukens. I can't support 3 bylaw officers with the hours that they presently work, and I understand that that's under negotiations, but I cannot at this time support it. So I won't be supporting the budget either, or this specific item. Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? Oh, I'm sorry. Did anybody else want to comment? I guess I got to move something too. Sorry, but it looks like Mayor. Did you have comment before we? May I have a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. How about this? That the committee recommend to Council the bylaw operating budget and 5-year plan as presented at the February 11th, 2014 Special Committee of the Whole meeting be approved.
Thank you.
I'll move it.
I'm sorry. Was that Mayor? Was that the Mayor? You're going to move it?
Well, it does. Well,
how can you
Get
move it
somebody
and
else
vote
to do
against
it.
it? Can
Yes,
she do that?
yes, Yep.
Okay. All right. Do I need to do discussion again, or are we good for calling the vote?
I think you always go through the process of. is
Okay.
there
Any
further
other discussion regarding that motion? Sorry, I should have had the motion first. My apologies. Okay. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Moving on to 3.3 Public Works Operating Budget, 19 to 22. Looking to staff. Anybody would like to comment on the budget? Director of Finance?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is another budget similar to Bylaw where there was some question that have union ramification. CAO, as previously mentioned, we kind of have to hold off on that at this time. So the branch drop-off is included in the budget with the overtime as previously budgeted.
Great, thank you. I will go to the public. Public, do you have any comments regarding the budget item? Seeing none, I guess I should do a motion first?
I will move that we forward it to.
Thank you. Thank you. Discussion? Councillor Logan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Notwithstanding all the work that our CAO has done to bring this to light, I still morally find it difficult to fund a service at overtime rates. And considering that this has been an issue that's been on the budget table for the last 2 years, well ahead of the bargaining process, that hopefully could have been wrapped up prior to. It's just I don't think that we can justify to the public any longer that we run the service at overtime rates. And unfortunately, based on that, I won't be able to support the Public Works budget at this time because of that one item, which could have been addressed previously. But anyways, that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Lukens?
I also align with Councillor Logan on this one. It's one that we've talked about since the election. I also, appreciate what has been done with respect to trying to get some resolution and some answers. But once again, I cannot support paying overtime for this service when it's becoming something that is a very regular occurring opportunity for our community, and it needs to be worked in as such as far as I'm concerned with our work schedule. So I will not be supporting it due to that as well.
Councillor Day?
I'd just like to, I feel very similarly. I don't think that Saturday work shifts should be at time and a half for a service that, is very predictable and very understandable and necessary. And I think I do really want to see that addressed. But I'm not sure that I'm ready to hold up approval of the budget in order to accomplish that, because we work in a union environment, and there is a process that needs to take place, and we're close, but we're not there yet. So I guess I'm a little more flexible in that I'm willing to approve this budget with the understanding that we are going to negotiate away from the way that it has been done and to a better system for the residents of Colwood.
Councillor Cullington, then Mayor Hamilton.
Thank you. I concur with Councillor Day's approach and I'm going back a number of budget years when we were looking at a very, very big increase. And we had, this room was packed and people were saying, this is important, this is not important. One of the things I found absolutely fascinating is the number of people who said, yes, we know it's going to cost us extra, but you'd better keep that branch drop-off program at 2 times a month. This is really important to us. So from that perspective, I'm quite happy to support the budget the way it is. What I would suggest is that we as a committee might want to look at making a follow-up recommendation both on this and on bylaw, that we're providing clear direction to our incoming CAO that we do expect to see this resolved through as much as possible through those union negotiations.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Hamilton?
And I'd just like to bring another perspective to it. As I sat in my office today looking out the window and hearing the beep, beep, beep of the loader and the dump truck out there as they loaded truckload after truckload of chipped product that was headed out into our parks and mulching around on the trees. They've just finished doing the little park area there across from the Colwood Fire Hall. What's the cost of that if we had to go and purchase that product some other location, the time that it would take to go and get it and bring it back into the community? And we have it right here in the yard for our staff to work with to help in keeping a standard in our parks. So again, I understand, the whole idea of the excessive overtime and trying to cut our corners and be strategic in how we spend our money and that sort of thing. But a decision like that has a ripple effect in the community. So I know, Councillor Logan, that you have spoken very passionately about how you feel of beautification in our community, and we're taking a source away in this if we don't.
They dump it for free. The tree companies dump it for free anyways. So.
Oh, well, yeah, no, it's part of the process out there.
Yep. Thank you.
Anyways, that's mine.
Okay. I'm going to talk first. Sorry, CA. I know. I'll let you. I'm not going to be supporting that either. I think until we get a resolution on the overtime, I think we can easily offer the tree branch off on a Friday or Monday for those people, and those people who don't have the ability to do that will just have to understand that this council's trying to be economic with their tax dollars. At least that's how I feel about it. Mr. CAO?
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to bring to everyone's attention, we're at the final stages of the budget process, and if this is stalled, that means the entire budget process is stalled. That's number one. Number two, I think the public enjoy this drop-off, and it's a very high-profile drop-off, just like it is at a number of other municipalities. And I think it would be, although there's a cost implication here, it's not huge. But I think there would be more of a backlash if this program was cancelled or even pushed to another day of the week, because I think a lot of people have Saturdays off. It gives them an opportunity to come to our drop-off and drop their material off. So I think that although you might think this might be a good way to try and force the issue, remembering always that the negotiating of the union contract will probably not finish before the end of this year. So it's that far. That's what I think at the moment, how far away it is. And I think that holding the budget up because of this one issue, I think would be an error. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion? All those opposed? It fails. Moving on to, well, that's it. Unless there's something under new business.
That's it, I believe, for committee of the whole.
Great. Next meeting, we don't have a date.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Do we have a date for the next meeting, or no?
No, there's no date for the next meeting.
Then I'll just look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor? Carried. And we'll be back in 10 minutes, 15.
Depending on what clock you're